A book I came across recently by a man I greatly admired, titled Jesus, Social Revolutionary by Peter McVerry, the Jesuit priest, is certainly worth a read. McVerry has spent many years working with homeless young people in Dublin. Through his Peter McVerry Trust, he provides accommodation and support for young people who are homeless and troubled in this city. In his book, Father McVerry highlights the challenge that Jesus posed by eating with sinners lay in the simple but deeply profound act of looking at a human being whom society considered to be of little value, of little use, of little worth, and recognizing that person's extraordinary dignity as a child of God. The core question asked by this book is, why was Jesus crucified? After at most 3 years of public ministry, and more likely only 9 months, Jesus was put to death by the religious and political leaders of his day. And not just put to death, but crucified. To understand the mission and ministry of Jesus, and therefore the mission and ministry of his followers, we have to explain why Jesus was crucified. Jesus was not put to death by bad men who couldn't stand a good man. His executioners were sincere and devout people who believed that they were doing God's will. Jesus was not put to death because his moral positions were at variance with those of the Jewish faith of his time. A person does not get executed for telling people to be kind, to be nice, or to be good. McVerry suggests that Jesus was put to death by good people acting for good reasons, because the God that Jesus revealed to them had radical consequences for the ordering, behaviour, and structures of society. Consequences that threatened the existing order of society. McVerry suggests that Jesus was crucified because the leaders of this time understood that the economic, social, and political consequences of personal transformation that comes from becoming a disciple of Jesus was revolutionary, and that revolution must be stopped. Jesus challenged the conventional wisdoms of his time. The religious and political elite of that time believed that those who, through their sinfulness, had made themselves enemies of God and had to be rejected and set apart from the people of God. Conventional religious belief held that holiness existed in separation from all that is unholy, impure. If the people of God failed to exclude these sinners, the people of God would become just like them, impure, unholy. Jesus sat down with prostitutes, with bankers, the homeless, the sick, the sinners, the outcasts, the murderers, the unclean, and he offered them salvation. This revolutionary view was an enormous threat to the existing political, economic, and religious elites. Caiaphas, the Roman-appointed Jewish high priest, who is said to have organized the plot to kill Jesus, said, "It's better that one man should die than the nation perish." As members of this Christian community, how does our church sit with this revolutionary message? Is the distribution of wealth in our society, housing and health policy, or government cutbacks in social services central to our faith? What do these social, economic, and political realities mean to our liberal Christian community? What then are the conventional wisdoms that shape our society today? If Jesus was with us now, what would he be pointing to? What would he be trying to teach us about our lives before we would put him to death? It's clear from Mark Edwards and Bob Dylan's Hard Rain that the poor, the dispossessed and the unholy are still with us. Their exclusion from our dominant Western society is still very much a part of our shared spiritual experience and conventional wisdom. But I would like to explore a different conventional wisdom, that of our unstoppable mantra, economic growth. In simple terms, we have an economic system that is based on a very narrow definition of supply and demand. We make stuff and we consume stuff. Nothing else is really important. This narrow economic system excludes many external costs, such as the well-being of human and natural resources and the ability of our planetary system to absorb our wastes. These external costs are all but ignored from our economic model. I'll talk more on this in a minute, but we measure this economic growth system with a phenomenally blunt instrument called gross domestic product, or GDP. And it should be no surprise to any of us that the lion's share of this wealth is held by just a few. We have the fat, rich north and the poor, thin south. GDP is such a crude measure that it treats crime, divorce and natural disasters as economic gain. GDP ignores the non-market economy of household, community and volunteering. GDP increases with polluting activities and again when we clean up after the mess. GDP treats the depletion of natural capital as income. GDP takes no account of income distribution, and it ignores the drawbacks of living off foreign assets. GDP is simply a crude measure of all economic transactions, good or bad. If I was to go out into the street now and someone was to beat me up and I had to go to hospital, get my face refixed, that would actually lift Ireland's economy by a small little bit. If a mother decides to stay at home and look after her children, that would actually see a decline in Ireland's economic growth. As a method of measuring, it fails. So how might we measure things differently? In the UK, an economic think tank, Redefining Progress, have developed a different economic measurement called the Genuine Progress Indicator. GPI starts off by measuring GDP, but then includes a range of other indicators such as income distribution, crime, housework, volunteering, higher education, long-term environmental damage, pollution, defence expenditure, resource depletion, the lifespan of consumer durables and public infrastructure, changes in leisure time and dependence on foreign assets.